Hey everyone, we are now finally at part 4 in this series of videos on installing a DRO on my mill. In this part we're going to install the Z-axis. Now I chose to do the Z-axis, which is the column, because in part 3 I did the U-axis, which is the quill. Together those form the vertical motion of the mill, and this particular DRO unit can combine those into a single measurement, which is really cool. Now, following my usual format, we're going to have a look at all the bits and pieces on a table. We'll assemble it all on the mill so you can see exactly how it's put together. And then I'm going to wire it up with the U-axis and the DRO just to confirm that it's all working. And at the end of the video, I'm going to insert the usual selection of machining clips and commentary, just stuff from all the hours and hours of footage that I recorded whilst doing this part of the project. So if you like that sort of thing, stick around and watch it. If you don't, you can leave at that point. Just be sure you like the video. All right, let's get on with it. All right, so these are all the bits and pieces that make up the Z-axis installation of the magnetic scale here on my milling machine. Just to cover it off again, this is the scale. These magnetic ones are fantastic. I chose them because they're 10 millimeters thick, 28 millimeters wide, and they don't need a huge box around them. There's also an adjustment facility built into the end of each of one of these. You put a screw through the middle, and then you can use these 5 little grub screws to adjust it if you need to, just that little bit. If you get your mounts in approximately the right place, you can do that last bit of adjustment like that, up and down, and then tilt it. As well, these don't need the amount of shielding that the glass scales need. You can pretty much expose these to what's going on your mill, and it doesn't really matter. But in the case of this scale, I have created a shield. This is some aluminium, just an L-shaped bracket. I think it's about 30 by 20. And that was purchased just like that. Cut it down, and it very nicely takes the scale like that, and it gives it that 20 mil, if that's 10 mil thick, this gives that another 10 mil worth of shielding, which is quite nice to have. Plus, it also gives me something to mount the scale on, because just like my other axes, I'm doing this, or I'm trying to do this, without drilling. And so these two acetal brackets, or spacers, I guess they would be called, I made these up custom to fit the column on my mill. And the column, of course, tapers away toward the rear. It's got a curve in it, and it's just not flat, so I had to do something to square that off. I made these two brackets because they fit where the cable channel attaches on the column of my mill. And so I'm just using the existing holes, which is why they're crooked and not straight, because that's how they were drilled at the factory. That's worked out very well. Took a lot of manual sort of sanding and fitting of those to get that right. Here's the reed head, the 1 micron reed head. Now this is going to, of course, be positioned over the scale. They normally have these rubber wipers there that rub up and down on the stainless steel here. I've taken them off so far on both the scales that I'm mounting because they're not really needed at this point. Other parts here, oh yes, for the reed head, there's a system whereby this track goes in there. This sits on the side of the mill, like that. And then the head is going to sit over here, like that. So to do that, I've got a very simple system. This screws again into 2 existing holes. Those holes are actually on the mill for a reed head, but they're not quite in the right position, of course, but very close. So I used this bracket. This was aluminium angle. It was 50 by 50 millimeters by 3 millimeters thick, so it was nice and thick, this one. And I've made this acetal spacer, and we're going to screw this on here, and then the reed head attaches to that. And there's a little bit of adjustment up and down in the reed head. So let's put this all together. It's pretty straightforward. And everything's countersunk, I should point out. All these are countersunk holes so that it all sits exactly where I wanted it to sit. Now I'm just going to tighten these not so tight, just leave everything slightly slack at the start. And if we look at how many parts I've made for this, I think the total is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This came with the mill. Yeah, looks good. These are as long as I could get in these screws, and they don't quite reach the other side. See, they also just go through and don't come out the other side. Just. So this here, it's got a cutout there. That's for the, there's an oiler right there on the side. And as I said, these holes are not tapped. It's an M3 screw going into an M2.5 hole. And it screws in nicely. And it will sit like that. It could be a kit set, couldn't it? The thing you couldn't rely on is all these holes, because they're, see how crooked those are, how they're all offset like that. It's because the person drilling those in the mill just went out there. So let's go over to the mill and install all this stuff. Here we go. Sorry it's no better than this. The key points to note here are that the mill has two holes there, and this thing here, this lower bracket, just screws to it, and it just has this channel on it. And then there's a bracket up here that screws to the mill there, and this thing just sits in front of it, so you can actually lift that away. Now, one thing I did when I attached all this here is I used the screw holes for the top bracket for that same channel, because I wanted to use those holes as part of fastening this plate to the side of the mill. And so when I did that, of course, the channel came out about 6 millimeters. And so what I've done down here is I've brought the other two brackets out by about 6 millimeters as well. So it all comes back into alignment quite nicely. Something else to look at here is this little channel there. I don't know if you can see it. A lot of these Optimums have that. That's for the magnetic tape. If you buy the Optimum DRO, it has tape, which is the same tape that's inside this thing. You just clean that out, you stick it on there, and then it has another piece of tape, which is steel tape. It's like this stuff here, and you stick that on top. So the whole thing's just held on by sticky tape, which I don't think is terrible. That would work fine. It's tempting to, you know, stick these things on with tape. I thought about it. I think it'll work fine for many of the axes. So let's fasten these brackets. We'll get this screw, put that through there. So this goes into the nearest hole. So this bracket's very tight. The holes are basically exactly the same size as the screws. So there's really no movement on this one. And I've lined up this thing here, this channel. I had to decide, is it going to go back from this casting here or even come over it? And I was tempted to place this all the way over that bit there, covering it. I didn't in the end because of this bracket up here gets in the way. That's how that goes. Bring that around there. Perfect. Now the next bit is this here. Now as for the up and down, left and right and all that, I'm mounting this the same as I'm mounting this. And I'm having the cable for the head come out the top. There we go. That's how that mounts. And from the front, it's basically invisible. The black is the same as that. You don't really see it. So that just goes up here, over the top. Now these two holes were in the unit already, but empty. They are there for a DRO. And again, countersunk. So I haven't really got any adjustment in this. I'm going to set the distance from that to the scale. I'll show you how I do that. Because I haven't got a feeler gauge big enough. So I looked around in my drawers, and this little piece off my protractor-y thingy here, my angle gauge thingy, fits behind there, and that's 0.8. So that's my good starting position, is 0.8. Okay, so the head is now moving. I'll take this piece here. I'm going to push it up behind, like so. Then just push the head down. Then I'll tighten that again. There. Ta-da! There we go. If you're wondering how magnetic these scales are, it does hold on to this. Not tightly, but it does hold on to that. Okay, so there we go. That's the installation of all of the parts I made to attach the scale to the column, the Z-axis. Yep. 2. And again, that could all be zip tied there. Certainly can. The cabling I've just done, really happy with how that went, very tidy. And that's the top right there. So this piece here obviously is the original, and I was able to use the channel here for the two cables belonging to the U and the Z axis together, and run that through there, out the back and down the side. Alright, so there we go. That's part 4 in this series of videos on getting this DRO installed on my mill. If you liked anything you saw and you plan on liking the video, please do that now, because if you wait till the end, it'll skip to the next video and I'll miss out on the like, and I really need the likes, really appreciate it. So thank you if you can do that now. That was the Z-axis, and that now gives me the U and the Z-axis, which I can run separately or I can combine into one. I think if you stick around and watch this video a bit further, I'm just going to test this. I'll put the head on and we'll just make sure it all works. And then after that, I will probably add a whole lot of machining clips. So if you want to see any of that, stick around past the end of the video. And otherwise, give me a like, subscribe, comment, share the video, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. So just before we get on with the rest of the video, I thought we should quickly wire it all up and just try it out. Make sure that these two axes are working as expected. So I've plugged the leads in, plugged the power in, put the head unit here on its bracket, and there it is. We zero like that. And then this quill, the U-axis, gives us up to 52 millimeters there. And the other axis goes up and down there. And I believe it's correct to have a positive number going down, so that you make like plus 10 is a 10 millimeter hole, for example. Yeah, that all seems to be working. Good. All right, let's get on with the rest of the video. I'm going to use the holes that are in there for this sort of a channel thing. I'm going to use those to hold the magnetic scale in some way. Let's go grab the scale. It's a 300 measuring distance, so it's like 420 long. Let's use my new power feed and wind it all up. Now, I remember earlier thinking that I needed to lift this plastic channel away from the column a bit, and that fits perfectly with what I'm doing. I've already lifted it away by using the upper two holes to hold this metal plate in, so that's already about just under 6 millimeters further out. So I can do the same with those two as well. Well, I was going to use an angle section here, this piece. It just gives me this little bit of a shoulder there, just to protect the scale from stuff flying back. And of course the reed head is easy enough to install over that, and it just faces inwards. So I'm going to mount that in there, definitely. Let's have a little think on the whiteboard. I think if I work on getting a block and then fitting it to that surface, and just leaving enough meat on top that once I've got it fitted to that surface, I can then draw a line across it based on this edge and then mill that off just flat, and that'll give me my surface. Oh, and then I realized if I look down here, I can get a profile of the column off the bottom edge there. Let's see if I could slide a piece of paper underneath. Oh yes, easy. So that's what I'm going to do. Well, I can certainly, from that, I can definitely mill these edges. And I just need to leave about that much meat on top that I can then mill down afterwards. Yes, let's do that. I'm pretty happy with how the acetal works. Big enough, thick enough, it's everything. Let's use that. Nice, as always. Now this has a plastic sheet on it. I'll take it off this time because it does make the tools go weird. The big time saver with this power feed, apart from being a power feed with my system here, is being able to just leave it there. Couldn't be better. And I can take it off and build a shed with it. How many power feeds can you do that with? So if I just cut out that much of this, the white would be cut out, then I can face down the rest of it till it's flat. So I'm going to use one of these blades to make my mark. Use this slim one. Yes, that's easy to repeat. Good, good, good. Now back to the face milling. And now we've got these lines here. Well, there we go. That's all I can do there. Little custom wedge. Looks good. It's apart. So I'm using that kind of screw. through there. So there we go. Those two are in place. Looking good, looking very good. Yeah. Yep, perfect. So, but I've already decided how I'm going to attach it. I'm going to get some angle. I'm going to go into those holes. It'll just come down here, go across there, go up, and then there'll be a block on the other side that this will attach to. 50 by 50 by 3 millimeters. That looks a lot cleaner. Down. Tight. All right, well that's that done. Now I've got to mount this thing on the far side, right about there. So this needs to be mounted on it. And then it needs a slot so that it misses this track. Right, this is all of a bit of a fiddly bit, this. All of it's fiddly bits because I'm trying to make it tight. If I leave it slightly longer, you see, if I make it the same width, then I'd be forced to put a hole. Well, those holes are for that. They'd be there and there, but I'd need to make the attachment holes there and there. Whereas if I make it longer, I could put a hole just to the right of that and just to the right of that. Maybe even one in the middle. Okay. So I've clamped that with this sandwiched in between this piece of metal on the side, not on the middle of that piece. And now I'm going to bring it off a little bit. Now I've put that up in the middle. Now I'm going to push the scale against it. They reckon 1.5 to 3 millimeters, but that's just not correct. And I've seen other people in forums say it's not. It's green, and that's green. We are nearly at the top, so I'm going to take it all the way up. We're at the top. And we're watching the green LED, so to make sure it stays lit. It's 200 mil right there. You get about 270 or 60 or so maximum. But now we get into this bit where it squeezes on the accordion, and it's all too low by then anyway. I'll try and get that off without upsetting it. Now I'll hold on to the bracket that I'm unscrewing. Okay, that's out. And then I have to get the whole thing out without moving it. Oh, get off. There. Now, obviously, I can't drill it like that. The idea was that I would mark a spot there, and I will somehow. So in the middle, yeah, that's the middle. Perfect. And that pen line I drew just along the gap there is there. So no matter what happens, I can get back to that. Took a little tiny sliver of aluminium that time. I think that's fine. The rag looks dirty, but it's clean.